Yeah, welcome everyone. This webinar is about creating, testing, and publishing indoor route networks in ArcGIS. Where I come from, we don't say route, we say route. So please forgive me if I lapse back into the British pronunciation. This is about route networks, not route networks. This presentation relies upon the ArcGIS Indoors platform by Esri, and it is a comprehensive system developed for indoor mapping and spatial analytics. It allows organizations to create detailed indoor maps, location-based experiences for facilities management, space planning, and wayfinding. You can create detailed indoor maps of buildings, including floors, rooms, and assets within those buildings. Enable indoor wayfinding and navigation for users similar to outdoor GPS navigation. And that's what we're going to be demonstrating today, how you can generate those indoor routes and pathways within the buildings. The ArcGIS Indoors platform supports space management, where you can reclassify space use and assign occupants to different rooms and manage how your facilities are being used. Facility management, combining your space usage with your assets and mapping all of your facility assets within your campus, for example. Workplace optimization, moving people around based on space utilization, but also hot desks and hybrid work situations. Emergency planning, that's where the routing that we'll be demonstrating today comes into play. And then location-based services, knowing where you are within a building and knowing how to get to the various services within your campus or within your building. So the ArcGIS Indoors platform really empowers all of these use cases, and it's a very powerful tool that Esri have really been building out over the last couple of years. CloudPoint are an Esri Indoors partner, and we have the Esri Indoors speciality. So we help customers get their data into this platform and get the most out of the Indoors product from Esri. So for more information on our Indoors offerings, visit cloudpointgeo.com/indoors. Prerequisites for this, building your indoor route networks, you will need ArcGIS Pro 3.0 or later. You will need ArcGIS Enterprise base deployment. So at least you've got your enterprise portal for ArcGIS, ArcGIS server, data store, and that base deployment of ArcGIS Enterprise. For the route network, as it uses the network analyst extension, you do need that as part of ArcGIS Enterprise. It comes with the standard license. You will also need ArcGIS 11.0 or later and be licensed for the ArcGIS Indoors Maps product. And lastly, you will also need your Indoors dataset populated with your floor plan data. So this webinar assumes that you've already gone through the process of converting CAD data to GIS format and loaded it into the Indoors data model provided by Esri. The rest of this webinar will then show you how to do the route networks. So we have a lot of other webinars and content out there showing you how to get that CAD data into the Esri Indoors model. We won't be covering that today, but there's webinars from CloudPoint and also Esri training on that topic as well. Software we're using for this demo is ArcGIS Pro 3.2 and Enterprise 11.3. With that, I'll hand over to Haley, who's going to demonstrate the process of creating the route network.
Alrighty, thanks, Steve. So yeah, as Steve said, we already have this assumes you already have all your data into the Indoors model. And so the first step for creating the network is to make sure you have these network data sets and the prelim network data set, with these layers. And then we're just going to be using tools to basically put data into these layers and then creating a network data set. So the first tool will be generate indoor pathways. That will kind of look like this, where you'll have all the possible pathways within the indoor space, and then you'll generate floor transitions going between those pathways and the different levels. and then we'll thin that pathway. So we'll take this and then basically end up with a thinned version of that with just the single routes going between locations that are determined to be the best routes. And then we'll create the final data set from template, which is another tool, which will get this network data set, and then we'll actually build the network. So now with that, that's kind of just a general overview. I'll actually go to the demo. So I did a video just because a lot of these tools take a long time. Whoops. So let's start that. So here we start with just looking to make sure we have the network and prelim network data sets. And if you don't already have those, they should have been created when you made the indoor data set initially. But if you don't have them, you can also run a tool to just create those network data sets. So over here, we have all of our layers. There's a details layer, and this layer is going to be important when we're running the first tool to generate the pathways. And so we're going to use that use type field right here that has all of the CAD information. And then also level ID, information like that. So then we'll run the first tool, which is to generate the pathways. So this is going to create a preliminary pathway data that will go into that prelim layer. So we'll search for the tool, and then we're just going to put in our levels feature and our details feature. And then in the details expression, we're going to use that field, that use type field. And basically, this is just going to denote which of our details that we don't want the routes to go through. So for this, we don't want it to go through walls, exterior walls, interior walls, as well as columns. And so that will just make sure the route doesn't go through those. And then we're going to put in that preliminary pathway layer, which is in our prelim network data set. So that's where the data will output into. And then also you have the option to put in a units layer. And so this means that you can decide which units you do not want the route network to go between. So for this case, I'm going to choose mechanical areas where I don't want the route network to connect to. So we'll run this tool, which generally takes a pretty long time to run, but the output of it is this. And so right now we're seeing all of the pathways on top of each other for each level. And so in order to see it, to make sure it really worked well, we can make the whole map floor aware. And so if we go to the map properties, we can change put into the indoors layer section all of our different layers that we have. And then it's going to come up with this tab, but in order to use that tab, you have to first go into all the layers that you have and make sure they're using the right field from the levels layer, which is the level ID. So that means that we'll specify which of the features should go to which level, so that when we view it, we'll only see one level at a time. So we do that for all the layers. And then now we can actually use that tab. So we'll go to this is University of Texas, Wagner Hall. And then now we're just seeing the first floor. So now you just kind of want to make sure that it created what you wanted. And so as you can see, it's avoided the walls and the columns and also that mechanical area that I had specified. And then all the pathways are going through the doorways, which is good. And then you can check different levels to make sure those worked. So now that is looking good. And then we can also view this data in a 3D scene. So after you've made sure it looks good in 2D, we can go and create a 3D scene by just inserting a local scene. And then what I do once I've created that is to just copy the 2D layers from your 2D map into your 3D scene so it retains all the symbology and settings that you had set up. So once you have that in here, you're not going to be able to see the layers yet. You have to first go into the the properties and change it from absolute to the ground to relative to the ground, and make sure it's using the geometry z-values, or if you have a field that has the z-value information, you can use that. But once we've done that, we can actually see that the units are now in 3D. We can see all the levels. And so then we'll do the same thing for the preliminary pathways, change that to relative to the ground. And then we should be able to see the prelim pathways. And it's a little patchy. I think that's just due to rendering, but it generally looks pretty good. We can see everything, and it's in 3D, so that is good. And then you can also do the same thing with your scene and make it floor aware, so you can actually see each individual level. And so now the next part is going to be creating those floor transitions. So these are going to be 3D vertical lines that are going to go between your prelim network on the different levels. So we'll just search for that tool. It's generate floor transitions. And these are all within an indoors tool set. So then we'll put in our layers again. And then here, when we put in the units, it's going to ask for which units are stairwells. And so using the use type field, I'll just select which ones are stairwells, which ones are elevators. So then it knows where to output those 3D vertical lines in the right place. And then this is going to go, so it's using the prelim pathways to connect the transitions. And then the output of these 3D vertical lines are going to go to the prelim transition layer. And then there's also a option to add elevator delay. So it's just the average amount of seconds that it will take for the elevator. So that helps with getting an accurate time for routing. So I'm going to do 30 seconds. And then we'll run that. So now we've gotten our, you can see these vertical lines, and they should be in the right places, the stairwell and the elevator. And then, so if we can look at the transition type to see which one's elevators, which ones are stairs. So if I select just the elevator, that's where that is. And that's just a straight line. So we don't actually have to edit that. But for stairs, we're going to want to make that look more like the stairwell and how it actually looks in real life, which will make more accurate routing. So we have to edit that 3D line to look like stairs. So I'm just going to do it from going from floor 1 to floor 2, and I'm just going to add vertexes to the line. For some reason, when I was editing this, the line would disappear, but I just needed to add those 2 vertexes, so I did that. And then saved it. And then if we go back to the edit vertexes, we can see that they're over here, and we get X, Y, and Z values. And so I found it easier just to find where I wanted the points to go to and just put in the X coordinate values using the map. So I put in those for the 2 points that I added to the line. And then, so that'll move it over to where I want it to be. And then also with the Z value, that's going to be where, how high it is. And so we have it set up where the ground floor is 0 feet, the second floor is 10 feet, first floor is 10 feet, second floor is 20 feet. So going up in 10-foot increments. So if we want a landing with a stairwell, it has to be between those. So that for this case would be 5 feet. So once I've done that, I made it 0 just so I could see where the points were and make sure they were in the right locations. And then I'm just going to change the Z value to be 5 feet, which will then create the landing. So that's what you would do for all the stairwells between your levels. So this was just for between level 1 and level 2, but we did it for all of the levels, which I'll show you what that ended up looking like. But as you can see, there's landing, it looks more like a stairwell. And then you're going to want to calculate the 3D length of these lines so you can get more accurate routing time. So this is what it looked like after we completed that and made all the stairwells between the levels. And then the next step is going to be thinning the pathways. So here we're taking this prelim network and then we're going to basically thin it down to just be single routes between locations. And this tool is going to make it so it's the best route possible. So we're going to put in our levels again. We're going to put in our prelim pathways and also our prelim transition features. And then routable locations. So we want to be able to route between the units, but we also want to be able to route between our point of interest layer. So we'll put those in. And then our target is going to be within the network data set, that pathways layer, which is our kind of our final pathways. And then also we're going to do the transition layer in that same data set. So we'll run this tool, which generally takes a bit of time. And then now you'll see we get a much thinned down version of that. And so this is just the first floor. We can check and make sure that it looks like it's connected to all the units. And same with the fourth floor, it's looking good. So now you're close to being done, but there's still some additional steps you can do. So we can connect to different facilities. We can also classify the pathways, and we can create landmarks. So first off, if we want to connect to different facilities, what we're going to want to do is take that pathway layer that we already have, and we're just going to add to it and create lines that are going to connect to the facilities. And so that's just other buildings. So now we can go from one unit in this building to another building. So we just add those lines manually to another building and then save that. And then I'll show you what it looks like after we finished for this demo. So this was our end product. And then, so now that we've connected to different facilities, we can also rank the pathways that we have. So basically when you run the pathways tool, there's a pathway rank field, and they all get the default value of primary, but you can also change these to be secondary or tertiary. So that means that if you have a route that you want people to generally take more often, you can denote it as primary and then denote another route as secondary, so that they're going to first be given the option to take the primary route. So there's a tool to do this where you can select units. Let's say if you don't want the route, you don't want people to take a route that's within a unit, you can select those units that you want and then use the classify pathways tool, and then it will take the features that you've selected in the units, and then any of the pathways that are in those units, it will denote them as secondary. So this could be helpful. Let's say like if you have a route that goes through a cafeteria, and you want people to take the route generally that goes through a hallway instead. So if you made the pathway in the cafeteria secondary, then they're going to end up taking the primary route. So as you can see, all the pathways that were in that unit I had selected are now secondary because of the tool. You can also manually change them. And then lastly, you can also add a landmarks layer where you can add a point, let's say like a statue, and then give it a description. And as long as it's within 4 meters of a route, it's going to be included in your directions. So it will say like, continue on this path past the statue, something like that. Now for the final step, we're actually just going to create the final network data set. So this is another tool where it's going to be create the network data set from template. So there's a pre-made template that should be included with indoors. If you go to your program files on your computer, you will see it within ArcGIS Pro and the resources, and then in the indoors folder, there should be network templates. So we'll do the one that is with meters for the final network. And then the output feature data set, we're just going to output it into the network data set. So after we run this, if you look at the network data set in the catalog, you'll see that there's a new right over here. This is what it outputted. And then the last step is just to build the actual network. So that's another tool. And so we'll just input that data set that was outputted from the last tool into this build network data set. And then you will have created a network data set. And then the next step will be to publish that, which I will then give this over to Steve to take control and do his demo.
Okay, thanks, Haley. Just close out of your video. Second. So yeah, that was a lot to get in the last 15 minutes. So that was a lot of steps there. And thanks a lot, Haley, for putting that together. So now that Haley's built the network, we can go ahead and test it before we publish it and make sure it's behaving the way that we want it to. So I've opened up Pro here, and here's the network data set that Haley's just created. You can see I've got my indoors layers loaded here in the view. It looks a bit of a mess right now, so I'll turn on the layer pick, the floor picker. You can see that cleans things up a bit there. I'll just bring in the network data set. So we can now see those pathways that Haley created. I'll turn off the indoors layer so we can see them a bit better. We've got that thinned network that we saw within the building, and then we've got those exterior pathways as well. Just to visualize it a bit better, I'll bring in the pathways. That's the pathways layer, and then the transitions layer. Now the transitions are a little difficult to see in 2D because obviously they're the stairwells and the elevator. So if we highlight them there, you can see these are the transitions that Haley was creating with those Z values, and the elevator is over in this part of the building. Now all of this is much easier to see if we go over to 3D. So we could go view convert and then just convert the whole 2D map to a local scene. But I already have one set up here. So this is the same data. I've got the pathways loaded on, and then I've added some thickness to the transitions so you can see them a little more easily in there, and you can see the elevator over here. So let's get ready to do a test of this network. So first thing we're going to do is come up to the analysis tab. Click on there. And then come over here to network analysis and select route. What that's going to do is create a new route analysis layer within our map. Give that a few seconds. So that's appeared over here in the contents. This is an analysis layer that we can use for testing the network before we publish it. So to do that, we come up to the route layer tab at the top here. Then I'm going to use this small icon here, create features, to create some stops on my route. We could import stops if I had a point layer of points I wanted to navigate to. You could import them, but we're just going to go ahead and digitize them here. So that opens the create features dialog, and I'm going to just place a stop. Let's say from over here. And then we're going to navigate up to, say we've got to get to a classroom up here on the 4th floor. We'll choose that point right there on the 4th floor. Now, this is easier, obviously, in 3D to select your position within the building. You can also change the floor picker and choose different levels there. So now you'll see we've got these points on our route that we're going to navigate between. Let's delete the last one. Then we come back up to the route layer tab, and we're just going to run that analysis and see what kind of route we get. So that's solving the network between those two positions. And when that's finished, you don't really notice anything straight away. And what I like to do is change the thickness of the route layer. So you can come in here and change it to a sort of a 3D tube and make it nice and visible, and then bump up the size. Like that. Put another stop over here. That one didn't take. There we go. Run the analysis. Just give it a second to draw. Okay, so now it's calculated a route. The quickest way to get from this point on the exterior pathway is through this entrance, up the elevator, and along to this location there. Now, what Haley did with her route network is that we planned some wheelchair accessible entrances. So this entrance down here on this south side of the building, we set that pathway to be wheelchair accessible, and these two entrances they contain stairs on the plans. So what we did was just change the attribute value of that pathway to hallway, and set these two to stairs. What that does, if I change the travel mode to wheelchair, then we should get a different route into the building. Let's out the way. Run the analysis again. And now we can see we've got a different route into the building. Still using the elevator, but coming in this entrance and going along and up that way. So it looks like our network is working as intended. So I think we're ready to publish. So what I'll do to publish the network is I'm just going to insert a brand new map into my project. And then take that route network over into my new map and just drop it in there. Now all I have is just that route analysis layer. I'm going to remove the base maps. We don't need those. So it's literally just an empty map with this route network added to it. And I'm going to go up to share and then share as web layer, publish web layer. And I'm going to call this University of Texas indoor route. And then notice that it gets published as a map image layer, not as a feature service. The route network will only be published as a map image layer, so that's all you need to do there. I'll specify what folder I want to put it in on our server. So this is publishing to our Enterprise GIS portal. You need Enterprise with the Network Analyst extension enabled to do this. And then I go ahead and share, publish that. Yeah, I've already published one with this name, so let's go ahead and call it route 2. I'm going to assign the numeric IDs. That's a typical error that comes up. The other warnings that I'm getting here, we're not going to worry about right now. The data source is not registered with the server. I just want to publish the route network up to the enterprise. So let's go ahead and publish. Now that that's published, we have the Indoors Viewer application where I can come in and configure the route service that it's going to use. So if I go into configuration mode, these are where you can configure the various settings, what web map is being used, what web scene if you have 3D, and here's where you can change and update the route network. So here's the one that I just published earlier, the network that Haley had built. So we've already got that one selected in our map. Save the configuration. And now under the directions tab here, this is where the route network comes into play. So we can map a route from the computation center, which is this facility over here, over to, let's say, the 4th floor of Wagoner Hall. And it will go ahead and calculate that route and give me the turn-by-turn directions. And also it can narrate those if needs be. Now this looks okay in 2D, it provides the route, but the indoor viewer also has the 3D option, so you can switch to 3D. And it's going to show you that route in 3D, and you can see we're going up the elevator here and over to that building there, to that office on the 4th floor. Now, if we try a different route just to test, we want to go from the 4th floor down to the 3rd. It's going to show us taking the stairs, and you can see we've extruded the details a little bit just to give it some sort of 2.5D, and those are the transitions that Haley digitized in with the landings of the stairs. If we change the travel mode to wheelchair, that's going to update the route, and you now see we're taking the elevator down. So it's working as intended, and you can always go back in, edit the pathways to reflect different barriers, different obstacles, stairs, etc., to change how the routes will be calculated based on the different travel modes. You can add a travel mode for fire, for example, which would force people to use the stairs, that type of thing.